Mm. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jim. We're starting in a few minutes. Jim, introduce yourself, please.
He's muted.
Jim, can you hear us?
Yes, no.
I see him.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, you're starting the meeting.
Oh, I get to be first. I'm Jim Berlin. Not quite up to coming there today, almost. I'm a member of this committee, a member of the land use committee. I'm the board parliamentarian, and I've actually been on the board for a long time, and I'm thrilled to be joining you.
Thank you, Jim. And we're joined by our first vice chair, Anthony Viola,
Hi, everyone.
who's gracing us with his presence today. All right, so before we start our meeting, we just kind of want to go over some rules we have here. So we try to give everybody an opportunity to speak. We know that everybody feels strongly about certain things. So we just want to make sure, give me 1 second. Well, first off, if you guys, you know anybody, we encourage you to invite your neighbors, your friends. We're obviously broadcasting through Zoom. You can change the translation captions so that you can communicate or listen in to us. Like we said, we want to invite as much members of our community. We know that everybody speaks English. So on Zoom, you can choose your language and follow with us. So rules of engagement. Again, we like to give everybody the opportunity, but we ask all our attendees to respect each other. Obviously, sometimes we don't agree. It's all right. That's what democracy is about, right? To have these conversations. We don't want anybody to engage in arguments or debates. Everybody feels strongly about their points, and we respect our points here. All public attendees have 2 minutes for questions, comments, or any concerns they want to address the committee. Again, we're open to dialogue, just not debates. And lastly, for the presentations, we'll give all presenters 10 minutes. Then we'll have a question and answer right after, starting with the committee and then the public attendance. Yeah. So, Alberto, you could chime into this. Alberto Rodon is a representative from MTA. He joins us as well. So, MTA, hey, Alberto. MTA recently had a meeting with from the Vice Chair Carmen, who's going to join us soon. They are making accessibility improvements in our area, well, in the city. It's part of the proposed 2025 and 2029 capital plan. So we encourage you guys to access the link. Please take note of it and recommend any stations in our area that might need some accessibility upgrades. We gave some recommendation on our end, but we encourage our public and our community to do the same. Lastly, if you go on any recent updates from our board, not only this committee, feel free to go online and sign up for our newsletter, any meeting updates, calendar updates. That's the link, and we can provide it as well. And this is the board contact. So anybody needs to send any material to us or want to have a conversation offline, reach out to the board, or you can reach out to myself or Carmen or any committee member, to be honest with you. We'll gladly engage with the conversation offline. Again, we don't have that much time. We all work. We all have families, so we don't want to be here for 4 or 5 hours. College time. With that being said, I guess we'll
My audio just went off.
Can you hear us now, Jim?
Yes, now I can. Thank you.
Awesome. So before we start, every April and November, we have co-street naming, where we entertain applications for community members that passed away and family, friends advocate for a section or a street in the area to be named after them. We had someone come last month. Now we have another family that wants to speak highly of their son who passed away last year. So if you want, you could just come up and introduce yourself. Then we're going to entertain the application next month, but we'll give her an opportunity just to kind of introduce it to us.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Estrella Figueredo, and my son's name was Leonardo Delon. He was only 15. I'm sorry, I get emotional. I believe it's the COVID vaccine that made him pass away. because, it was 10 months after, he was getting fevers unexplainable. And, then, and then, he got strep. I mean, it was terrible. And he passed. Not because he was my son, but he was a beautiful soul. And all his friends gave the idea that they wanted because he was born and raised, so was I, born and raised in 190th in Fort Washington. So he's been in PS 187 since kindergarten. So they want to name the street 187 between Fort Washington and Pinehurst with his name. Because even though he was young, he always, since he was 5, he would pick up litter, didn't want litter in the street. Since he was raised going to Bennett Park, he always thought about somebody else. He always would pick up the pebbles, like I don't know what possessed the city to change the Bennett Park. And they put a whole bunch of pebbles, and that would go to, if anybody's familiar with that park, they will go through the middle, and he sometimes would sweep it because he always thought that with the bicycle, and people could fall down. Every single friend of his always said that he spoke words of wisdom. Leonardo didn't speak to speak. Since he was a toddler, he was in baseball. He got to, and the principal's here wants to talk also. He got to high school, he made it to the team. He was always a third base boy. He also was in the travel team Nighthawk. Not because he's my son, but his friends, everybody that's here could tell you, Leonardo was a beautiful soul. He never disrespected me. He was a sweet child since he was little. And I think it would be an honor, and all his friends wrote letters. I don't know if you got the whole packet. I gave the packet in with the letters of his friends, even an elderly lady, like if he saw an elderly lady, he would carry their package, he would cross them. I have an elderly lady also wrote a letter, and we were supposed to get 150 signatures, we got 200 signatures. Everybody wants to see his name on 187, and that's why I came here today, even though it's bittersweet, because I want to honor him, but at the same time, I'm dying slowly without my baby. So basically, I came to see if you guys will vote yes to put his name on the street. So now I'll pass the floor to the principal that he took his time out of his busy schedule because he wants to come and talk about Leonardo.
Estrella, so
Yes.
we entertained the application in April, and it's very heartfelt. We want to invite you guys, the family and friends, and the principal to come back in April.
Mhm.
In April, we have more of an extensive conversation. You guys can each.
Right. But the thing is that I was told that I had to hand it in February, so I came and gave it to Paula, and she told me to come today.
No.
And that's why I came today, and I had the principal come today, and they also told us to come back March 24th.
Yeah,
And now you're saying it's April. I mean, I'll come every time I have to come,
yeah.
you know.
The reason is, we speak about it in April in the committee. When we discuss, it's about 6 or 7 of us. We discuss the application, then we vote on it in committee. If you pass it or not, it goes to the general board, and the general board,
Which is Carmen de la Rosa.
general board is 50 board members.
50
Oh, 4
more.
more members.
Yeah, that's the meeting at the end of the month.
Okay.
That would be late April. And then again, you guys are invited to come and give your piece as well.
So you want me to come at the beginning of April and at the end of April?
Yeah, I'll have your email, so I'll send it, and all I can provide, I'll
I'll
send you
give
all
you
the
my phone
information.
and everything
Yeah.
before we leave tonight.
Yeah.
But can the principal talk?
I would refrain from it,
Sure.
just because we have a packed agenda, and then again, we just don't wanna get the ideas lost, since we wanna make
Okay.
sure we hear all of you guys.
Okay,
think
because
it's
I thought that
powerful.
you had to have it in March. This is the way it was explained to me,
Mhm.
that we have to vote on March because in April that they decide.
So,
And so I was misinformed.
in March, you have to give in all the material with the application, so that goes to the board office, the board office forwarded to us. And then we consider in April, once we vote on it at the end of April, we pass the information down to count, remember the ones that. Then she goes, her trajectory.
Okay, so I shouldn't come March 24th?
No, you don't need to. April, the first,
April the first, April and the last
yeah,
April.
the first Monday of April, and then I'll give you all that information.
Okay,
So
when
you
you
guys-
finish.
Yeah, yeah,
we'll talk.
we'll talk. We'll have
Okay,
all
but
that.
anyway, thank you for
Thank
listening
you
to
guys
me.
for coming. I know
You
it's
know.
very tough,
Thank you for listening.
and I appreciate the support from the principal, the friends, and family.
Yeah, and there was more people coming. The thing is that the cold weather.
You
That's
can tell he
why,
has some
yeah.
impact.
that's why
Yeah.
normally,
Yeah, he
that-
had a bigger impact.
Yeah.
I mean, to every single, because even like in this one, Ali, where's Ali? He was with him since pre-K, and he actually went to the same high school. And he had to stop going to the high school because he couldn't go without Leonardo being with him.
That's what
They've
it's-
been friends since pre-K. He definitely did an impact because I went to do a walkthrough. The principal invited me because that high school has been so supportive. It's an excellent Manhattan Center, right? Math and science. I'm sorry, because I'm nervous, so.
No, no,
And let me tell you, this principal deserves a medal. He has given me so much support, and they are still consider me family, and they invite me to a walkthrough. And kids that I didn't even know that were friends with Leonardo, the new friends in high school, every single kid stopped me and said, Leonardo always talk wisdom. Always talk wisdom. He's had an impact in the community with his friends from pre-K till high school, and even the new people in high school. So that's why I'm here.
we'll connect offline, but yeah, we understand. We'll connect offline.
Okay.
We'll prepare you for that. All right, thank you again. It's very tough. All right, so we'll move on with the agenda. It's Materian, that's gonna be a little hard to follow up. That was hard for. But we have Julio, Joe, Monica, and Amato here to present on the upgrade for the new Cancer Plus building. Yeah, the new construction on the Cancer Plus building. Yes, please stop sharing your screen. Give me 1 second.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amador Centeno. I am the Corporate Director for Design and Construction for the New York Presbyterian Hospital with responsibility for the Columbia campus as well as Allen Hospital. Thank you for the opportunity to share some information about an exciting project. Some of you may already have heard, we've been planning and we're in the design phase for a new cancer hospital. That's a rendering of what the building would look like. We are towards the final stages of the design. The building allows us to consolidate cancer services that we have currently.
Can he share his screen, please?
Let's finish it. No, give me a second.
Thank you.
Or you can read, you gotta finish your homework, come on.
Is that better, Joe?
Yes, much better. I can see something now.
Sorry for that. So the building allows us the opportunity to consolidate cancer services that are currently spread throughout campus into one facility. You can kind of see the building is kind of broken up into 2 tranches. The upper portion of the building consists all of the outpatient cardiology cancer programs that we have throughout campus, plus ophthalmology. Because currently, I'll show you in a little bit, we took down the Eye Institute in order to create the space for this new building. So the upper portion is outpatient cancer services. The lower portion is basically our OR and our imaging platform, Linacs, CTs, MRIs, and so forth, in addition to the ORs. So together, the building's about 515,000 gross square feet. It's about 16 stories tall. All right. So. So this is yes. There we go. So this image is the site map of what's currently the I Institute. So this building right here is the I Institute. We started demolition of that building in September. We're almost in the final phases of demolition. Down to the third floor, we anticipate being complete with demolition around the middle to the end of April. At that point, we want to transition into the next phase of construction, which is going to be the excavation phase, which is what I want to talk to you about the site. So again, just as a matter of orientation, this is 165th Street, this is Fort Washington. This is going to be the site of the new Cancer Plus building. So moving on to the next one, I want to share with you discussions that we've had with the Department of Transportation about what the site logistics plans would look like. When we put the plan together, there was a lot of thought. There were three primary goals. One is obviously we wanted to maintain pedestrian safety around the construction site. Two, we wanted to maintain the flow of vehicular traffic, both on 165th Street and Fort Washington. And three, we wanted to come up with a plan that would not block the intersection of 165th Street and Fort Washington. So we wanted to come with a logistic plan that will allow trucks to access the site directly without having to back in. They can make the turns within the project site itself, and then they can pull out and go right to their destination. Again, trying not to impact that intersection on 165th Street. So if we start on 165th, the blue line that you see is basically the site that the project site controls. There'll be no pedestrian traffic through that purple site. You'll see on the Fort Washington side, there's kind of an orange lane. That orange lane is going to be for pedestrian traffic. I'll explain it a little bit. So on 165th Street, a couple of things that we worked through. The site, in order to create the capacity for the project site, the north parking lane and the north drive lane have to be taken over and added to the parking site. In order to maintain the two lanes of traffic, both on 165th Street, we have to shift the traffic lanes about 300 feet from the corner and then start shifting just east of the construction site. In order to create those two lines and maintain traffic, there's about 200 feet, so about 20 parking spaces that we're going to have to displace. The discussions with the DOT, what we've made the recommendation is on 165th Street. On the northwest side, there's currently a no standing designation along that street. What we propose to the Department of Transportation is to change that to alternate site parking, similar to what currently exists on 165th Street between Fort Washington and Broadway. The DOT has taken that under consideration. They're amenable to it. They obviously just want to hear a recap of today's meeting. The second thing that we're going to do is pedestrian traffic. We want to stop pedestrian traffic on the corner of 165th Street and Broadway on the north side of 165th Street. When you pass the driveway into the Morgan Children's Hospital, there are no entrances, pedestrian entrances into any buildings along that block. There's an ambulance bay for the pediatric emergency department, and then there's loading dock bay, but there's no entrances to any of those buildings. So what we want to do is put some sort of visual barrier closer right off of the driveway, so basically directing pedestrians to cross on Broadway and 165th Street. There's a city bike program that's on the south side of 165th Street that's going to remain where it is. On Fort Washington, it's a little bit different. So on Fort Washington, during the construction period, during the day, the workday, we're going to eliminate pedestrian walk traveling between the corner of 165th Street up through heading towards 168th Street. There'll be flag people on either side directing pedestrians across during the construction sites. When the construction day ends, then that's when we restore that pedestrian lane, which is in orange. And so there'll be a landing on 165th Street where pedestrians can queue when they're crossing the street in either direction, but that'll be restored during the evening and the night hours. The other change that we're proposing, you'll see some lines here. So we maintain the two lanes of traffic on Fort Washington, and then you see a blue line that kind of then makes a right turn on 165th. Currently, that's a no standing lane. A lot of people stop there anyway to pick up and drop off patients. What we're proposing to the Department of Transportation is to change that into a thoroughfare so that it's a drive lane with a right turn only. We're hoping that that'll improve it because then, particularly if you're coming southbound on Fort Washington, you're creating two lanes of traffic, one merging to 165th Street, and then leaving the center aisle for the cars to just continue going on south. The proposal for that lane and the proposal for the signs change on 165th, those two are still pending. The DOT wants to hear follow-up from this meeting. The rest of the site logistics plan, they've shared with us, and this is kind of what they've agreed. Again, in both cases, on 165th Street and on Fort Washington, when we open up that site, there's gonna be concrete barriers along the street that'll protect the vehicles from the construction site. The only difference is on the corner of 168th Street, there's gonna be movable barriers. And the reason for that is because during the day, when trucks come in, we want to move the barriers and have the trucks just enter head on right into the site. Once they're in the site, they'll have enough room within the site itself to turn around in whatever direction they need, again, without having to back into traffic and impact the traffic. Once they leave, again, they'll already be oriented to the direction that they're heading out. We can open up the movable barriers, the truck can leave and go right down 165th Street on their way to the destination. What else? We're hoping to activate a website real soon. That's gonna have information about the building itself, the project. There'll be FAQs on the construction site. There'll be an email address, there'll be a phone number in case anybody from the community wants to reach us with questions, concerns, any issues that you may have. One more slide, but basically, this slide just shows what the site starts looking at like once we're actually building the superstructure in the building itself. The site logistics all remain throughout the life of this project. So the project right now, we're targeting to be complete with construction and go live by the end of 2028. The site logistics stay the same. The only thing that I'll point out, you'll see a blue square here and a blue square there. Those are both the tower cranes, both on our property that we need to help us erect the building once we go into that phase of construction.
Thank you.
Please.
Right on time. Right, Bruce.
So the parking lane on the way left of Fort Washington, where all the cab drivers and TLCs sit and wait for people coming out of the hospital to take them home or whatever, pick up. What are you gonna do with them?
So there's a taxi stand.
Eat over there.
There's a taxi stand right in front of Milstein Hospital.
Yeah,
So what we're proposing is not changing that.
Yes, otherwise it's gonna smell like banana everywhere, Papa's not gonna be happy.
I'm sorry, can you mute yourself, please?
and I'm sorry if I'm late, you probably mentioned it.
No, that's okay. So there's a driveway that gets us in and out
Yeah, I
of
know the
Milstein
driveway.
Hospital. So
Yeah.
just south of that driveway, from that portion down to the corner, we want to change that, which
Right,
is currently no standing. We want to change that into a drive lane
right,
so that the vehicles can just drive and queue.
but where are the taxis gonna?
They're north
North,
of the drive. They're currently right in front of Milstein Hospital.
which is a bus
So,
stop.
so Bruce, there's no anticipation to change,
What's that?
there's no anticipation of moving the taxi stand, is that what you're asking?
I'm just
So-
asking,
So the
there's
lane,
usually like 15 cars sitting out there waiting, and they all commiserate, and somebody comes out and they. No, me, no, so, and then you have on Tuesdays, you have the, Green Market, which adds more confusion because the trucks are parked north of 168. Up to Haven, from Haven up to 169 on Fort Washington. Anyway, all I'm saying is that, what plans do you have for those cabs to move elsewhere?
Currently, we're not proposing to move the cab stand from that portion of the
Is
street.
They're just gonna cruise then, they're gonna come around and around and around and try to pick up people.
Well, the cab stand's gonna stay in front of Milstein Hospital. What we're proposing is changing the designation after the driveway. So after the driveway, north of the driveway, there's a section right in front of Milstein Hospital, in between the two
There's a
driveways.
food truck that sits there, and then there's a bus stop, and then,
Well, the bus stop's a little bit further north, but I hear your concern.
well, I know, I'm there all the time, so, I'm just saying, practically speaking, you're gonna have to deal with all these, TLC guys.
Do you
Okay.
mind taking it back just to the other slide that you showed, because that was just a little clearer for me.
Just to add to a
The
point,
second one, Julio, right
they're
before
gonna
that.
have two flaggers, and on top of that, there's traffic enforcement agents on 165th. It's about two, so that should help
Okay,
traffic flow.
good,
It should help the
because
traffic.
it's a mess.
Can we go back to
Can you just walk me through one more time? Where exactly did you say for the parking spots that will be removed alongside 165th? What's the sign? Yeah, I know that. I'm very familiar with that street. Where is it that you're proposing that they make alternate side parking?
Over here.
That
From
location.
This corner down to the entrance of the Heart Center.
Right.
Currently is a no standing designation.
That's only about 6 parking spots though. Probably less than that, I think.
Yeah.
No, it's closer to 20.
There's no.
I don't think so.
No,
No.
there's no way it's closer to
She's right.
20. That parking spot only goes maybe halfway through the, I would say halfway through the block before that entrance
And
to
then there's a.
the
a drive
parking. I
for
think
the-
it's about 5.
For the garbage trucks to come in every night.
So I can just say this, we measured the measurement from this sidewalk to the entrance here is larger than what we're proposing on this side of the street.
Okay, and that's the only location that you have suggested, not the other side, because I believe the other side.
This side?
Yep, that's also
That's
no
parking.
standing, or there's no standing from like 4 to 7.
Parking there.
10 AM,
Parking.
Okay.
7 to 10 AM.
Can you
Just
get rid
7
of
to
that?
10 AM.
Can you get rid of that?
I could ask.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's,
I
that
don't-
place is a mess, that whole corner intersection.
I will definitely probably just take a look and just walk. I don't feel like that's 20 parking spots, but I'm just really concerned. There's already very limited parking spots in that area. And want to make sure that we're just accounting
Sure.
for that.
I can confirm
So,
that.
thank you.
Can you ask to remove the non-standing on this side? That would, maybe they
This
can
side
give
of
it
the
to you?
street?
Yes.
We have a follow-up meeting, so I can engage them, see
Please.
what would be required there as well.
There's parking there now. Shouldn't be parking.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Go ahead, James.
How long will this project take from before it's done and, you know?
We're anticipating completion December of 2028.
2028.
Yes, sir.
My other question is, Fort Washington is a very heavily cycled avenue. Well, any accommodation, bicycles? Because otherwise cyclists are gonna be on Broadway,
Well,
which is,
with any construction, they have to maintain the bike lane. That shouldn't change. The only thing is if they're bringing trucks in and it passing through a bike lane and they have flaggers. then
I don't think there's a bike lane
There's no
right
bike
there. There's a
lane
bike
there.
lane- There's a bike lane south of it and a bike lane north of it. They don't have a bike lane right there, but a lot of cyclists, of course, they connect from one lane to the other once you get past the hospital. So, just wondering if there's any accommodation for bicyclists.
There isn't, as you pointed out, when we met, there is currently no bike lane on that portion of the street. And that wasn't something that we
Can
discussed
they,
with the
can they
department.
continue on Riverside past 165 and go up?
Well, if you're going uptown, we're gonna get the bridge entrance.
When
sorry.
do I get to talk instead of everybody talking all one after another?
Jim, you're next. For this portion, we're not gonna allow the public to comment. They're creating a website and then any concerns, you could just reach out to them at that point. Just want to engage in the committee and well, I don't know, Jim, go ahead.
Thank you very much. As I understand it, during the day, you're gonna have on this, we're talking about for Washington Avenue and from 165th to 168th. You're gonna have one northbound lane and 2 southbound lanes. And the southbound lane closest to the curb will facilitate entrance and exit to the, various hospital by cars and ambulances and, car services and such. Now, that's all very nice. In fact, it's downright brilliant, but the whole thing will fail entirely if you allow left turns from the northbound lane, because they're going to block everything. So what you have to do in order to get this to work, and you may actually have to put up barriers, is you cannot allow left turns from the northbound lane at all. Basically, you put up signs saying all entrances to the hospital must come from southbound lanes and they can drive around. Because again, if you have these lanes running, which means they're not going to be blocked by double parkers or people trying to turn, then it will work. And in fact, once again, I compliment you. It's absolutely brilliant. But on the other hand, if you don't do that, it will be even worse than it is now, or as bad as it is now. And it's terrible now because I no longer take the southbound number 4 bus because occasionally it gets hung up in that area and it's just, I'm late to where I'm going. Now, the other part of the same story is people and we, as a committee, have seen this, particularly when parents pick up their precious children at school, they decide the laws don't apply to them. So the other thing you're going to need are not just people who can direct the traffic, which you will need. And I know you're going to have some flag people at the corner of 165th and Fort Washington, but that's not sufficient. You're also going to have, and then again, this is, something New York City is going to have to do. We will actually need enforcement people. So if people decide they're going to stop and make a left turn, right then and there, they will get a ticket. Because again, they're not, and sadly, and this is just a commentary, but it's something we have to keep in mind. Since the pandemic, people have decided the laws don't apply to them anymore. It's gotten much worse, and that's with drivers and you name it. So those are my thoughts, and certainly respond to what I was saying about the traffic lanes, because again, I'll bet you dollars to donuts, if you don't stop left turns from the northbound lane, the whole thing will fail, and you're going to have this tremendous traffic jam, which of course could really harm people, because ambulances might not need to get to where they're going. This is a hospital zone. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. So that corner has been challenging. We have partnered with the New York Police Department to place 2 traffic agents from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to help mitigate. Our intent is to keep those agents in place throughout the duration of the project. And that's something that they've indicated that they're willing, but it'll require constant communication. This morning, we had 2 other traffic agents on 168th Street. That was not as consistent as the one on 165th and Fort Washington. They're there every day, Monday through Friday. The one on 168 is a little bit more sporadic. Part of the reason that we partnered with them was specifically because of the congestion that's been on that street, both the intersection and on Fort Washington 165th Street. And so we're trying to take as many different steps to try to not make the traffic worse and keep it flowing as best we can.
I think to Jim's point, I think it is a good point to bring up to DOT. If you're going east, coming from Riverside Drive, maybe there shouldn't be a no left turn. So I understand. It just will lessen the chaos.
Well, again, you didn't address the issue of left turns from the northbound lane, and unless that's dealt with, this whole clever plan of yours will be in vain. It'll be the same chaos now, except there'll be all the craziness at the southwest corner also. So again, from my point of view, and I've lived in this neighborhood for 81 years, okay? I've been around, been watching this intersection. We cannot have this. You've got to, make it work. And again, I'm willing to bet any amount of money, unless you stop left turns from the northbound lane for people trying to get into the hospital, you're going to have a gridlock there that will put, it'll probably be worse than New Year's Eve in Times Square for drivers, because they can't go. But I mean, you could try the experiment and you'll see it won't work, and then you'll do something. But the idea is, and that's one of the reasons we have community boards, because we live here for the most part, or work here, or whatever, that we can give you input. And I see, if a traffic plan could scream any louder, you would be hearing it too. Again, and I hate to be repetitious, if you don't stop left turns into the hospital entrances from the northbound lane, you will not have traffic moving at all. It will be an astounding disaster. And I've said my piece.
Not just Millstein, it's the other building, 161.
It's both.
It's both.
Right.
And And also, we brought this up before, and move the Tuesday food trucks into Haven Avenue, get them out of there. Just one day, but every bit makes a difference, because people just hang out in the Haven Plaza there anyway, when the food trucks are there for the food market. So, every little bit helps. But Jim is absolutely right. People make left-hand turns into Millstein, into 161, and it just slows everything down.
We can engage DOT on these issues.
Thank you.
Of course.
Are you guys looking to hire anybody from the community to participate in construction? Is that something you guys have considered? How have you incentivized our community? The building is great, obviously. Columbia, from a there's an advantage to having that building there. But what are we doing to bring jobs to our community?
Good question.
Joe Anderson
Yeah,
from
Joe.
NYP. What I would say about local hiring is, again, this is gonna be both the demolition, which is almost done, and then the construction of the new building is a union trade job. So what we can do, and what we've done on projects in the past, is if there are community members who are, in any one of the trades, we could certainly make our construction manager aware of that, so that, that individual can't be required to work on this job, but if they would prefer to work on this job, then they should have the opportunity to do that. So we could certainly work together to figure that out. NYP, our construction manager hires the individual trades, laborers, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, and so on. So if there are folks who already have their trade card, yes, we'd like to see if we can help them with that. That's good for everyone.
That would be good. You guys can partner with Workforce One, maybe some type of job event. There are a lot of people in this community,
Sure.
construction. A lot of small businesses as well for subcontracting, so. You guys can extend a hand. I think it's one hand feeds the other.
Great question.
Anybody else from a committee? And again, we'll continue having discussions with Julio and the team. They're working on the website, so the public, please reach out to them with the questions. I just don't want to engage in another 20, 30 minutes of this. We're excited. I think certain things work out the way it should alleviate traffic in the area. I think one of the bigger things is the hiring of the traffic engineers. I know a few months ago they weren't there, there was one, right now they have two. And usually if it becomes a chaos, they employ more flag and what's it going to be to get more traffic.
I would love to get more updates from you all. Maybe as you go on to the next phase. I know right now you're all doing demolition, but probably once you've entered the next phase of the project, we would love to see you again. To just provide an update and see how things are going. I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah. You guys can give us periodic updates.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
All right. By the way, everyone, this is Carmen Paulino. She's our vice chair. I should have had her.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for being late. I was just coming from another meeting, but happy to be here and join these discussions tonight. We have a full agenda.
All right, with that being said, let's move on. Next, we have the discussion on Broadway traffic conditions in Washington Heights and Inwood. Right, DOT. Hey, how are you guys?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Santainez. I'm the Manhattan Deputy Borough Commissioner for the New York City Department of Transportation. Thank you to the board for having us on for tonight. I'm also joined by colleagues from our transit development team and our colleagues from MTA New York City Transit. We're here tonight. Lauren Evans will be presenting a few slides to begin our conversation about Upper Broadway in the district. So we wanted to bring to you just what we're calling an existing conditions presentation to highlight the corridor, kind of discuss what currently our observations, why we're looking at the corridor and what types of improvements we can see to fulfill in the future, and really hear from the committee and attendees continue our conversation about potential improvements that we could see. So I think with that, I'll just go ahead and pass it on to Leora, but we will be here for questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I'll also introduce my colleague Adam Bailey from the MTA, who will present some portions of the presentation. So thank you all for having us to talk about existing conditions on Broadway. I'll start by giving some background on the project and then talk about the tools that we have at DOT to address bus priority and safety. Then we'll summarize and then open up for discussion. So like Jennifer said, we really want to hear from you all, both the committee and the community, to have a discussion here. So DOT and MTA are looking at making improvements on Broadway because it's a very high ridership corridor. There are about 30,000 riders on the 5 MTA bus routes that use this portion of Broadway. And they're also very slow bus speeds, which can be 4 to 7 miles per hour for most of the corridor throughout the day. Broadway in this area has been identified by the New York City Streets Plan as a bus priority corridor. And it's also a tier 1 priority investment area, which I'll talk more about later on. There's a high rate of transit dependency in this area. There are about 76% of households that do not have access to a vehicle. And 71% commute by public transit, and only about 14% commute by car, and that could even include through carpool. So the study is looking at Broadway between 157th and 220th. There are 5 routes, as I mentioned, the BX7, the BX20, M5, M4, and M100 on Broadway in this area. And there are many important bus route connections to the subway, including the 1, the A, and the C. And this stretch of Broadway connects to a lot of important locations, including the bus terminal at the George Washington Bridge, the Marble Hill Metro North Station, schools, hospitals, and much more, as we all know. So now I'll hand it over to Adam for MTA data.
Hi, everyone. So as you can see in the map here, we've broken it into segments to show the average speeds from May 2024. So the slowest speeds between 171 and 186 are going as low as 4 miles per hour. For those of you who don't know, New York City has some of the slowest buses in the country, and this is a great example of that issue at play here. So throughout the corridor, it's really starting at 11 a.m. and then the slowest, as I'm sure you all know, from like 2 to 6 p.m. And the highest ridership is between 171 and 186 with over 15,000 daily riders passing through that corridor. And this is also the slowest segment of the corridor. And again, our ridership, so when most people are on the bus is also when the speeds are the slowest. And that's true northbound and southbound. So it's not just people, going one direction. It's both ways at the busiest time, at the slowest time, and affecting, tens of thousands of people.
So I'll also mention some information about general traffic. For general traffic vehicles, the slowest speeds are also in that 171st to 186th Street portion. And speeds are under 11 miles per hour in this example hour of 5 to 6 p.m. And there are about 300 to 600 vehicles per direction in this example hour on weekdays. So when we are studying the data here and the potential treatments, we're going to be keeping in mind the need to balance the slow bus speeds and high ridership with the also low vehicle speeds and relatively high vehicle volume. So we're always looking to make that balance part of the project. So on demographics, in the study area, in the quarter mile surrounding the study area, there are 180,000 residents, 81% of which are Hispanic, Latino, or non-white. 15% of residents have disabilities. And I mentioned earlier, but it's worth repeating that 76% of households do not have access to their own vehicle. So I also briefly mentioned the priority investment area as determined by the New York City Streets Plan. That is determined by socioeconomic information, population density, and also a historic investment from DOT in the transportation infrastructure in the area. Also, citywide, the average annual median income of bus riders is lower than that of car drivers. which really highlights how these transportation bus improvement projects can be a way to really help improve the lives of lower income New Yorkers. So another really important piece of this project study is thinking about pedestrian safety. There's a high rate of crashes. So this data is showing 2019 to 2023. And there were 1,053 injuries on the corridor, and that's across all of the modes. So 83 of those were severe injuries and 3 of them were fatalities. So it's a really important part of this project to think, how can we also improve pedestrian safety and just lessen the amount of injuries. So on Broadway, we have in this study area, we have 2 portions that have, the differing geometry. So north of 169th, we have in each direction, the 8-foot parking lane and the 2 11-foot travel lanes. Below 169th Street, there are the medians and the pedestrian spaces around the medians. And in each direction, there's the 12-foot parking lane, an 11-foot general travel lane, and a 10-foot travel lane. So just to reiterate the goals of the project here, we're really looking to increase bus speeds and reliability, upgrade bus stops, which I'll talk more about later, and create safer pedestrian connections, and also just make sure that traffic overall is organized in a better way, and at every, and we can make adjustments to ease kind of pain points in the network. So we have many tools that we use in the bus priority program to address or to try to improve bus service. The top left is showing the offset bus lane model, which is when you convert one travel lane next to the parking lane into a bus lane. The top right is showing the center running bus lane with the boarding islands in the middle. Bottom left is showing busway. So that's a transit and truck priority with restricted vehicle access. The middle is showing the curbside bus lane, which is when the parking lane is converted during bus lane hours to bus lane, and in all other hours, it remains a parking lane. Another thing to mention is the queue jump signal. This is something that we can implement by creating a special phase in the signal cycle that gives the bus its like a head start in the intersection. So the bus is able to go before the turning vehicles in its same direction start conflicting with the bus. So that's the general bus priority, but I'll move us on to some other potential interventions that we often pair with these bus priority projects and really make them integrated into the project as opposed to a separate idea. So we have implemented automated enforcement on these bus priority corridors, which is a bus mounted camera that issues tickets. We have pedestrian improvements. So for example, this rubber speed bump or the pedestrian painted ped space. And neighborhood loading zones is also a really useful tool because we can study the curb usage and see if there are any places that need more turnover or other types of, curb regulation treatments. Another piece is more on the MTA side, but consolidating bus stops or spacing out the bus stops so that bus service is faster. In addition to pedestrian safety, curb management, and the bus priority treatments, like the bus lanes, we often on these projects make bus stop improvements. So we have a lot of inaccessible bus stops throughout the city. And so when we study corridors for general bus service improvements, we're also looking at giving a more comfortable and accessible experience to riders. So the top left is showing the leaning bar, and the bottom is showing benches, which we can put in at bus stops. And the top right is showing a sidewalk accessibility improvement project. So there are many bus stops that have maybe broken up or grassy sidewalk in between, you know, where the bus riders are going to have to walk onto, which is not accessible. So we can fix those up. And the bottom right is showing the bus border treatment, which is either sometimes concrete, sometimes plastic, to create more boarding space for riders, but also it smooths the bus stop process for the bus driver because they don't have to pull to the curb in order to pick up and drop off pedestrians. They just stop and then continue. So I know I covered a lot there. So just to summarize, we're looking at improving bus service and reliability. And some of the tools that we have are the bus lanes, the better bus stops, and the updated curb regulations and signal timing and traffic organization tools. So that's the overall. Right now, we're in the outreach, the winter outreach process, which we're doing the first round of outreach with the community board. Thank you again for having us. With the elected officials. We spoke to them a few months ago. And then the next step in the general process is to continue studying the corridor, continue hearing feedback and developing a proposal, which we would ultimately bring back to the community boards for continued feedback. So that's the general idea of the presentation. We can move into discussion. I'll just, on the next slide, just pose very general question, and then we can open up. What we want to hear from you is how is Broadway functioning now? What's working and what could be better? And are there specific locations that you notice that need improvements that you'd like to share with us? And in general, are there other stakeholders or people that we should be talking to along the corridor that can help us in this process? So we'll open up. Thank you very much. And curious.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. That was great. Question, how does the automated enforcement work? Because along Broadway, there's always double parked cars, which slows the buses down, slows traffic.
Thank you.
People get in the way. We've talked about automated enforcement at some projects that we've been working on in front of churches and schools.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough cops.
Right,
They're
so,
great, but there's not enough of them.
so similar to like getting toll by mail.
Yeah.
It's a camera mounted on the front of the bus
Yeah.
that when the bus lane is active, that camera would read the license plates and issue a toll. But typically what happened, sorry, not a toll, but a ticket, right? Like an officer would if they were present. But typically what we do is like a rollout. So at first there'd be warnings to sort of.
Where is that being used and is it effective?
Yeah, I believe in, I don't have all the corridors offhand.
I don't mean here necessarily, but other places in the city.
Yes, yeah, I'm saying there are certain corridors and busways, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes,
According to Alberto can answer this, but he said
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a pilot program.
it,
And
it,
it's in certain bus
Oh,
routes,
okay,
not
so
all.
it's new, it's all new.
Yeah, and it's
Last
being
summer,
rolled out already.
last summer.
yes.
Oh,
So
good.
around here, the BX 36 on.
Right.
on
Yeah.
Wadsworth.
181st Street,
Yeah.
Wadsworth has it,
That's what
the
it says.
BX Linwood has it,
Sure.
yes.
Yeah,
And
so,
then along Broadway that are currently using the pilot program or?
I don't believe so.
So
no,
for-
so
It's a car with-
there,
Maybe Leo,
Alberto,
Alberto's
Go
on,
ahead.
sorry.
There are not.
yeah, there are certain routes that are currently that have the ACE camera enforcement. We're looking to expand that across several other routes next couple weeks or couple months rather. We have found that the enforcement has some corridors have experienced 30% increases across its route time. So and also that most folks who receive a ticket don't do it again. They learn after the first time, which is positive, right? We want the program to work. So it has proven that it does work. But once, so to start, when we activated a route, there is a 60-day warning period where folks receive warning tickets before actual summonses are issued. But also, you know, part of the warning period is to folks to get activated to this is a new tool that we are using to speed the buses for our customers, but also drivers benefit too, because buses move along faster. They also move faster without double park cars. So it's a kind of a win-win we're trying to do here.
Right, thank you.
To that point, has DOT considered maybe having some data from the ACE program after the implementation on Broadway so that we can see if the bus speeds actually increase because of it? Instead of kind of just, I mean, I know you guys are on preliminary stages and we're just having a discussion. But prior to implementation, I think that data is important, right? Because if when Alberto 30% is an increase in 30%, we'll see the numbers get better. I mean.
Yeah, and it would have to be paired with a bus lane though, right? So it's like, it would still be a part of a larger toolkit of making a bus. Like we wouldn't just roll out ACE, right? Because you can't enforce the double parking if there's no bus lane to enforce.
Also, it doesn't enforce if there's a bus.
I think there might be a pilot coming for double park, but right now it's just on bus lanes.
Hold on, I'll clarify that. So for ACE, it's not just a bus lane. ACE also captures double park vehicles within the bus route. So if there is a car double parked on the bus route at the bus stop, it will also capture those vehicles.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Anybody else in the committee? A moment. Jim, go ahead.
You're muted, Jim.
Jim?
You have to mute yourself.
Come back to it.
Jim, we'll come back to you, Jim. Anybody else in the committee? Before I give the public an opportunity? Let's start with you. Go ahead.
So I just want to go.
Introduce yourself again for a minute. You know your name, but.
Yes, name is Gabriel. I'm here from the community, and I just want to go back to the part where we're talking about the low income and also like the whole layout of Broadway. So basically, like, actually, can you go to the part where the Broadway is? Because so I'm wondering, where is there any part of this plan for like bike lane? Because a really good alternative for this is going to, for cars, right, is a bike lane. Obviously, we want both, but is there, because in none of those designs that I see a space for a bike lane. And I know that, like, you know, for in a low income budget, what really works well is different forms of micro transit, like e-scooters, e-bikes, bikes, stuff like that. And it's something that we really see in this community. Like I see every single day, I see people on e-scooters without helmets flying down Broadway. We got no protection for them. I go on an e-bike on Broadway. It's like I'm fighting for my life just to go like 10 blocks to work. Like I almost died like 3 times, literally in 10 blocks. So I'm just wondering, like, is there going to be any space? Like I see the pedestrian space, and I've looked at the map before. I don't really understand like what the purpose of that is. Like, and is there any space for it? Are you guys considering being like, protected? But
Well, that's something that, you know, we certainly can take into consideration. These folks are from our transit development and planning unit. We do have a separate bike unit. That's part of our transportation planning and management division. For now, we're just bringing, you know, what we see as potential enhancements for bus riders and the pedestrians. But we are always looking for opportunities to expand our cycling network. Hear you on the e-bikes and the ubiquity of those, but we'll certainly take that under consideration.
Go ahead, Freddie.
3 good points. On Gabriel's point, I just want to double down on the bike lane. I think it's way more serious from a planning perspective than you may have outlined. So sooner or later, Upper Manhattan is going to come to terms with the fact that it needs more bike lanes, and you have a hill on either side of Broadway. The only through passage from 165 to the top of the island is Broadway. There will be at some point a bike lane that will be protected down that road. So you just need to reach out to the bike people just so everybody's on the same page. You don't want everything you do. If you put out a bunch of bus borders, they're gonna be removed later. So, well, I've been here long enough that they redid 14th Street and it was beautiful, and then they dug it up again the next year because no one had talked to Con Ed, you needed to dig up the street. So these things happen. The other thing is, I just wanted to quickly mention in the toolkit, you didn't mention meter rates, but on the Upper West Side, where the density of storefronts is not any greater than it is in Upper Manhattan, the meter rates are significantly higher, which will probably get your traffic turnover better. So people aren't just parked at those meters. There's also no enforcement north of 165th Street. So both those things can be taught in the toolkit. Raising the meter rates to get a turnover, so people that are parking there are actually using the businesses, or making it a 15 or a 20-minute or a 30-minute meter. Also, those loading zones, they're not going to work in this neighborhood unless there's enforcement. I drive through CB7, they're generally open. They would probably never be open up here. I don't want Debbie Downer, but I'm just trying to be realistic about it. And then the other thing that you're fighting is, and you'll hear this from Shoot and everybody else, you have two-way traffic, you have two-way traffic signals. It's an uphill battle. So I don't know how to solve that. And probably nobody does. But it's something that you want to find out at least where the best practice is. Because one of the reasons there's no flow is because, you know, on Riverside Drive, they'll turn it northbound and they'll change the signals, and they'll turn it southbound and they'll change the signals. We've always got system flow both directions, both time of days. It's a very challenging problem. Thank you for the time.
I can talk again, by the way.
Yeah, let Jennifer answer, Jim, and then you have the next question.
And just very briefly, thank you for those comments. We certainly, have taken them down. Exactly what you were saying, we're looking for specific location data, like problematic blocks, or like portions of the corridor, like north of 116th Street or 165 that you mentioned. So any specifics like that are super helpful to the team for the development of the plan.
It's every block.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
That's noted too. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you. I'm using my brand new iPad, and apparently the Zoom software wasn't up to it. Suddenly my buttons wouldn't work, or they would disappear and come back and wouldn't, anyway. So, but here I am. Two things. Number one, I know one of the pieces of your toolkit are exclusive bus lanes. I don't think they'll work on Broadway. And that's essentially because Broadway doesn't have enough room to have dedicated lanes. There are two other interesting things about Broadway, which I'm sure you're aware of, but at a certain point, Broadway is the only continuous north-south street going through our district. All the streets to the west of it end at Fort Tryon Park, and all the streets to the east of it are up the hill and end at that whole mess by George Washington High School. And the only street that goes consistently north is Broadway. Now, this made George Washington very happy or whatever during some battle a long time ago, but that's a traffic nightmare. And then to make matters even worse, at essentially a pinch point, we have the 34th precinct, which has control of the streets in its area and pretty much can do whatever it wants. So I believe they've actually, well, again, I don't know what they've done, and it's in their interest for a variety of reasons to improve traffic on Broadway, not just bus flow, but traffic flow in general. But, they're part of the equation. And again, they basically own the land there and can do what they want. They can say there is parking, they can say there isn't parking. And again, there's a rationale for it, but it's something we're going to have to work with. So these constraints are difficult, and I certainly wish you the best. And then the other thing, I suppose, although you never talked about Fort Washington, but we talked about Fort Washington previously, and you probably heard it, because of the hospital, even before the construction was there, there's huge amounts of congestion on Fort Washington, again, between 168th and 165th Street. And that doesn't help matters with the M4 bus. So I hope all these little pieces will inform me. Now let's see if I can mute myself. Thank you.
Well,
My name's Peter Reeves. I've lived here since the nineties. I recently saw there was a presentation at the Bronx Community Board that borders us right up north. They're doing, the DOT is putting a bike lane on that bridge. But then you cross right into Manhattan and there's nothing. So you're dumping out the bikers right into the street traffic. And they're building a bike lane now there. So I know you guys aren't the bike team, but if you could just relay that. Like, if you're gonna build a bike lane there, it makes sense to continue it down.
I reached out to Lyle, he'll be lovely, but I reached out to Lyle with that concern, so he's looking into it with him. Okay. Hold on, let me give Allegra Legrand a chance, she's online, she's been waiting, and then Diane Jackson after. Allegra, you have 2 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi. So yeah, I guess I have pent up demand for saying things. First off, I would like to point out that New York Open Data has kept excellent accounts of how buses move around New York City. And this amazing person named Jahia Zaboda has put together a website where you can see exactly how fast or slow your buses are. And that, so you can type in jahia.cz and you can find out exactly how your bus is moving around town. And you should. The next thing I'd like to say is that most people in New York City don't park. They don't drive. And in our neighborhood, I think like 12% of people actually use a car to get around to where they need to go. Most people walk or take public transit. And the same number of people that walk and bike are greater than the number of people who actually drive. And I feel like so often in these conversations, like I see DOT has laid out parking lanes and travel lanes and pedestrian space, but you know that this is not being tailored to the neighborhood that they're communicating to. So our neighborhood, people here don't really park. And so they are laying out a plan that subsidizes the commuters into our neighborhood without taking much account of the people who actually live here. So I wish that we could see a plan that was more true to the people who live here. My pent up demand from the previous presentation is that, you know, people who are getting around Broadway, 165th, Fort Wash, there is a lot of car traffic and also a lot of pedestrian traffic, and it is not a place that feels really safe to be on foot. Particularly, the last presentation was about an expansion of the ophthalmology unit. Those are people who could be hard of vision. And for folks who have a hard time seeing, it is a gauntlet to get across 165th Street or Broadway or Fort Washington in the whole hospital arena. And I wish that we could hear a bit more consideration of how we can prioritize safety of folks on foot or on bike who are very vulnerable to the whims of people who are traveling by commute, because most of the people in this neighborhood in their cars are traveling by commute from out of the neighborhood. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Allegra.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll just respond quickly to that, the first part, which is that this picture on the screen here is not a proposal. This is the existing condition. So hearing that you want to see more for transit and pedestrians here is helpful for us to know. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you. Diane Jackson.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm a deacon at Greater Fowl Chapel Baptist Church on 155th Street between Amsterdam and Broadway. You're talking about putting in bus lanes on Broadway for services. We've found that since 155th Street between Amsterdam and Broadway has now been made a bus corridor. So for the last few months, on Sundays, a lot of our parishioners have been getting tickets for double parking. Before, we weren't getting these tickets because it was understood that people are coming to church service. And now because so many people are getting ticketed, a lot of our members are reluctant to come to church because some of our members are coming from, the other boroughs, or they're coming from further upstate, like Ossining or Yonkers and places. So what are you doing to handle those situations when every Sunday there are church services, people are double parked, but now they'll get a ticket because now it's been designated a bus corridor. And I know that double parking is always illegal, has always been illegal. I understand that. But there was always exceptions for church services and for things like funerals. So how will that be addressed?
Yeah. Yes.
Deacon Jackson, thank you for those comments. As Leora just mentioned, this is not a proposal that we're bringing to you tonight. We're looking for feedback such as yours, Deacon, that you highlighted the importance of space for the parishioners to come and worship on Sundays. During our development of any proposal, we do coordinate with our sister agencies, that includes PD. And they can also highlight impacts to the 3-4 as well as, other blocks where they're seeing certain types of behavior.
Any more comments from the committee? Well, thank you guys again for coming. This is an ongoing conversation. We started a few months ago. They gave us a very similar presentation. We had discussions. They came back and actually, and I thank you guys for that, are considerate of our input. I think that was one of our biggest concerns is prior to any implementation, we wanted to obviously give a voice, but allow the community to provide feedback and recommendation. And it seems like it's an ongoing work. So we appreciate it. And we hope to continue the conversation. Obviously, in Broadway, there's a lot of stakeholders, businesses, schools, medical facilities. You're Presbyterian of the block. And I think it's a conversation that needs to involve everyone. On our end, we look forward to eventually have some type of a public forum or hearing. Obviously, we'll host it, invite you guys so that we can invite more members of the community. We've heard a few of the inputs and a few of the suggestions, but the reality is there's a lot of voices that we're not hearing at the table. So, we're open to the community, being considerate of that. I think that was all of our biggest issues in the past, the last few months. And we look forward to continuing this conversation. I think it's not a bad thing. You obviously want to improve accessibility and transportation for our community, but it's a lot of moving pieces.
Thank you for your partnership and the time tonight. The presentation will go online for reference, likely tomorrow or the following day. And we'll be happy to attend anything that the board hopes.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Leo, do they have a contact? You guys have a contact email or something?
Sure, I can share my card. We also have.
Yeah, Lyle, any concerns, reach out to Lyle, reach it out.
Let's do
To
like
me,
send
and I'll
observations back and stuff.
Yeah.
Leo, can I
Okay.
just give you-
Yes, I'm sorry we made you wait so long. I know that you were.
And if you want to do yours.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Sure,
please. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care. All right. Sorry. All right. We're only halfway to the agenda. I'm gonna allow Alberto from MTA to give an update. So then we have a update from Lyle, and then we have a conversation with Lyle for potential resolution. All right. So Alberto, thank you for being patient. Thank you for the information earlier. The floor is yours.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Leo. I'll be quick. I just want to remind folks that reduced fare Omni cards should have been received already. But more importantly, all of our customer service centers can now transfer value from Metro cards to the Omni cards, our CSCs, our mobile sales vans, and 3 Stone Street. The nearest one in CB12 is 168th Street. It's an accessible station 24/7. Jamila and I were able to help of our reduced fare folks take advantage of the transfer option. I think 2 minutes, very easy, seamless process. I want to encourage folks to use that new resource. Also, I want to extend the option to you, Leo, and the board to host us for a presentation or even an open house rather, and where we go over the new updates for Reduce for Omni, but also help folks transfer their funds at the CSC. So happy to have the conversation offline with you, Leo, going forward.
Sounds good. Thank you, Alberto. And Alberto's always accessible, so I appreciate him and Lyle. They communicate with me constantly, letting us know about all these great updates and certain things that MTA or DOT can do to partner with us. So thank you again, Alberto. All right, Lyle, the floor is yours.
Mary, what about Mary?
Oh, hey, Mary, I'm sorry. Mary, a committee member and the chair of the aging committee, might have a question for you, Alberto. I'm sorry, Mary, I did not see you.
It's not exactly a question, it's a comment. I'm gonna be actually having Alberto do presentations at my other organization, and I also asked Ebenezer to contact Alberto to present at the Asian Committee on April 3rd. But one of my biggest concerns about the Omni card is that you have no idea how much you have left on it. You get on the bus, you tap it, it doesn't come up with what you have left on it. So, you know, people are going to be running, you know I am, I'll be running out of money on it and not know it until I'm on the bus and going to wherever, and then I have no way to get it filled. And, you know, that's important to know how much you have left on it. With the Metro card, you dipped it and it said right away how much your balance was.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually looking at installing fare readers. Like you have the Metro card at the stations now, you swipe it, tells you your balance. We're working on installing those hopefully at some point this year. But again, we're rolling out better features for customers. In the meantime, you can also refill not stations, but also the mobile sales vans and also our retail network. So think of 7-Eleven, Walgreens, CVS. Those are new locations that will refill your cards at no charge to you as well. But again, we'll take those comments back for sure.
That's fine, but I don't know when I need to refill it. That's the problem. And the point is, you know, I have a disability. I use a rollator. I can't get around to all these places.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, I hear you, Mary. We also have the automatic refill option that some customers use now and that they really enjoy. That option does continue with reduced fare if you want to have the auto reload as well.
That's great if you have a balance on your credit card or whatever routinely. I don't have that, and a lot of seniors don't even have credit cards.
All right,
So
like I said before, we're going to continue.
We'll be talking about a lot of these things at the other meetings. Okay, but I just wanted to throw that out as main concern that I have.
No, that's important.
I don't like the Omni card.
Okay.
I really don't like it for a number of reasons.
All right, we'll walk it back. Thank you for your comments.
Alberto, now connect you with Mary, so that maybe you can go and give some updates at her committee as well. I think it'd be great to have MTA explain how Omni works, the reduced fare, and kind of just walk them through from A to Z. Just kind of give them some type of a plan so that they're not lost. Mary's showing that concern. I'm sure it's a lot of people in her shoes that have the same issues.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here to help and make sure everyone's comfortable with the new fare payment system. I understand after 20 some odd years of Metro card, you're used to that, and we're being forced to shift over. So we'll happily help out with that.
Thank you. We have one more comment from Allegra Legrand, and we'll move on to line.
Oh, hi there. Thank you so very much. So I posted in the Q&A, I read this article in the Gothamist that Omni cards are actually being used to really, really track exactly where people come from and where they go to. And there, you know, our public schools also use the Omni cards now, so maybe they're also being used to do some serious like tracking of our public school children. So I was hoping to have some transparency about exactly what kind of personalized data Omni keeps track of, and what exactly they do with the data. Is the data for New York State entities, for New York City entities? Do they give it over to Doge or whatever? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Allegra. We do not work with Doge. When you sign up for an online account, again, the online accounts are optional. And those have the same security features as any other online platform that you work with, such as your banking and others like that. You don't, like I said, you don't have to have online accounts. It's optional. In terms of what data we share, we don't share data. We also, even internally, we can't track where you're going. It's not tied to a person, right? So we can't say, hey, this is Allegra's Omni card. We know where she is. That's not what we do here. We can't do that. Along as well as with your payment information as well. That's all encrypted. It's not something that's public and something that you control.
Thank you, Alberto. All right, now, go ahead. The floor is yours. Hello.
Evening, Leo, and everyone. I actually don't have any new updates right now. I'm not sure if you saw my email. I've been I've been out of the office for a little while. I'm actually serving on a jury. I'm on jury duty, so I haven't been in the office for a little bit. If there are any questions you have, I can try to answer them. But I don't have any new updates. I've had pretty limited contact with the office since I've been away. One thing I guess I can mention is what I see on the agenda as far as the taxi stand conversation.
Yeah,
or delivery signage request. I know we had a conversation about that not so long ago. That is currently under review with my colleagues at DOT as far as a formal request. So independent of this conversation tonight, at least you'll get DOT's comments as far as the feasibility of this request at some point. But I just wanted to let it be known ahead of the conversation that this request is being reviewed by the agency. So you'll hear, like I said, at least our formal response to this. But you can have the conversation, and we can have at least the community board's comments if DOT determines that it is feasible to move forward with installing the 4-hour vehicle signage here. I'm sorry.
So we'll have the conversation, but we shouldn't put a resolution out until we get some type of feedback from DOT.
I mean, that's probably the way I would play. I mean, we did receive the formal request, so we are looking into it. So I mean, however way you want to play it, pretty much. But I just wanted to put it out there that the request is currently under review. So you'll hear back from the agency one way or the other as far as feasibility, independent of this conversation that you're going to have tonight. So I just wanted to preface it with that. Yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't know if anyone has any questions. I can, at least try to answer with the knowledge I have. Like I said, I've been out for a little bit, but I can try to answer any questions that you guys have if you have any.
Fred has something. Fred.
Riverside Drive 150th, 160th, construction project status.
I have some updates, so I'll provide it. Yeah, he gave me a list of, last meeting, February, we sent him a list of, a laundry list. And he provided a good amount of updates for a lot of it. A lot of it's still being looked at, being studied. Some of it, we have updates, so we'll speak about it very well.
Yeah, I guess just briefly as far as the viaduct construction. Long story short, there have been several delays due to weather, due to the pandemic over the past couple of years. I know that there was a timeline for completion at ideally the end of this past year. The new timeline is to be determined, just based off of some of the things that we've had to work on. Other unforeseen during the rehabilitation. So our Bridges Division is well aware of the concerns of the community. We've heard, about the issues and that a timeline, you're waiting for a timeline. Like I said, the project is under review. And we're working on trying to provide a newer timeline, something that's more updated, based on the work that we've done currently and what's yet to come. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have some more information as that comes in. And I guess in relation to some of the questions that you asked, Leo, in regards to, I know we discussed daylighting last month. I don't know if you saw I sent a list of locations, at least within CB12, that DOT had daylighted in 2024. There are a few, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are about 2, 4, I think 7 locations. Looks like within CB12, a few at 9th Avenue, several around 186 by Chittenden Avenue in Cabrini, and a few by Elwood Street. But like I said, if there are locations that you would like DOT to look into, we can reach out to me. As other locations are added to the list based on our review, I can send those locations to you. But yeah, I did, at least to this point, send over an updated list of locations that were daylighted last year. So that's also happening. And trying to see if there's anything else. I think you'd asked for information regarding the Horton Plazas. I know we had a conversation in regards to our proposal for the plaza on Audubon, as well as some other plazas within CB12, our public realm division, which includes Kyle and some others that were in attendance last month. Did take back your feedback and your concerns. And, again, we're doing a review of Plaza 175th, as well as the comments and concerns that came up at the last meeting. So, again, stay tuned for that as far as additional feedback. And yeah, anything else that you would like to get further information on or details, you can always reach out to me, or it's Leo who can reach out to me, and we can find out for you. But that's all I have as of now, and hopefully, if all goes well, my jury duty will wrap up relatively soon, and I'll be back in the office. This is pretty much a one-off as far as attending the meeting. I got the okay from the judge to attend, so I'm here tonight. But like I said, I'm just kind of not very visible in the office, at least for the current time. But you can still send emails and correspondence. I do have the ability to check email, at least for now. I'm trying to at least send information to my colleagues for their review while I'm gone. So it may be limited access, but I still kind of have the chance review and send information ahead. So keep on doing that, and like I said, any information that comes across while I'm away, and even when I come back, I'll pass it on to you as it comes.
Thank you. And we'll have a conversation with Open Plans next month on University Daylights. I know most CBs in the city, except us and someone else, have passed resolutions for University Daylights. Yes.
Yeah. So I can ask a question for Lyle.
Now, Julio.
Yeah.
Hi, Julio.
I know. So some time ago, I guess the security department of the hospital had approached you to get approval to be able to put these sort of not bollards, but right around the middle of the street.
Yeah.
To prevent vehicles from making that left turn on Fort Washington Avenue into like Ashley or Herbert Irving. And you say you were gonna sort of follow up with folks at the DOT. Do you know if that was approved?
I don't have any updates yet. I know that was still under review. As far as I know, I can check with my colleagues to see if there are any updates that I can pass along to you. Send me an email.
And so I'll send an email, but just know that Bruce has brought that up. And if we don't get that, Bruce is gonna be very, very mad.
You got it, baby.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I heard at the beginning of the meeting, as far as just the concerns about Fort Washington in the area of the hospital. So those have been noted. But yeah, it also did bring into remind me that I'm gonna check for you to see where we stand on that request. I do remember that. Like I said, just send me an email just to put it back at the top of my inbox, and I'll see what information I can find out for you.
Can you include me in those emails so I can also follow?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because yeah, there are a couple of things going on around there. So yeah, Leo, definitely loop you in, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julio.
So watch there. You see what Jim and Bruce were saying that
Oh, that
we're
one.
coming north on the left turn.
The one you say was less, parking space.
All right, so now don't, or you might want to be around for the next couple of the agenda points. We'll talk quickly on this. Guess they don't need a resolution from us now. Eventually, we'll find out what our and colleagues think about it, and then we'll discuss more. But I received the requests a couple weeks ago, maybe a little more, regarding a livery stand signage. So it's not necessarily for a livery stand, it's signage that allows cab drivers to pull over and use bathroom at bases to go eat lunch. The issue is that 182nd is St. Nicholas and 192nd Street. There's a cab base. Could be my mind which cab.
Riverside.
Riverside. Yeah.
There's one at 181 in Fort Washington.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So Riverside is there, and I don't know if anybody's familiar. You drive by, they're always double parked. Cabs are always double parked or parked at the hydrant. Which obviously with the recent tragedy that happened on Riverdale with the fire, so that's what we don't want that. Obviously, it's illegal and it's a a huge safety hazard. So they reached out and requested that we reach out to DOT and we press signage. The signage will essentially be placed there so that there's no standing unless you're a livery cab driver. It would remove about 2 or 3 parking spots from that area. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it actually would eliminate double parking going towards Fort George Hill. Obviously the safety issue that they will, the community will do what they want, but cab drivers at least won't park at the hydrant, and we allow people who work to use the bathroom when they need to go in and take a break or whatever it is. So it's something that I want to discuss. And obviously we would speak about it when we have to find some solution on it. And then we'll have more conversation. I did invite the manager. She reached out to me, Sarah, I believe her name is, but she couldn't make it today. It's not a bad thing because Lyle said that he's waiting word from his colleagues. So it's something I want to put in your radar, and it's a potential conversation we'll have. So,
What's the current street that you said there's one right now, if we remember, so
on
that we
Dykeman.
can just.
Yeah, it's on
Phase
Dykeman
two.
between Broadway and Vermillia,
Dykeman.
the north west. Right in front of the city MD Capital One, there's a sign there, and it's pretty much for like, forgot the exact name of it, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
for
what I
livery of cabs. And it just says, no stand here, no stand. Does it work? That's debatable. Obviously, people are gonna do what people are gonna do. But in essence, it should provide alleviate the issue of it. So we'll discuss more when that comes around. Yes, sir.
One at 181 is either 4 or 5 cars. Nobody else parks there. I forget what the sign says exactly, but
Yeah,
it's, but every.
we have-
I'm
every
looking
unit.
at it
If you
right
look at
now.
the email
And it
section.
functions really well.
That is.
Yeah.
I would only suggest to do more than 2 cars.
We'll give you guys a bit more,
This is in a recent,
might be,
no.
we'll discuss it. I'll forward you the email so you can see. We actually took a screenshot of that signage and sent it to Lyle. So we'll discuss. But to move the agenda on, getting late. We're at the lengthy portion. We're gonna discuss permit parking. Obviously, you guys have heard, it's becoming a hot topic. I know the council member and Jamila is joining us to give us some of the conversation and legislation. Fred is gonna give us some presentation. He's done a lot of research, a lot of studying. He sent us a lot of information. He was on a local white I'm drawing a blank today. He posted an article recently discussing discussing permanent parking. So we're gonna allow Fred to present on it. We're gonna have a brief conversation, and then we're gonna have Jamila kind of give us the breakdown of what's going on in legislation. I think that's the important part of it. just because she'll give us more of an insight of where it is, what should be happening, and then we'll discuss the resolution in the future, because there's nothing set in stone yet, so we don't have nothing to go off. It's a lot of research and so, yeah, this is incapacity. So,
So there's one page that's like
yeah,
generalized, and then the legal size thing is more a spreadsheet.
yeah, I have
Like
like,
it should be. My presentation is up here on the desktop, but I have no idea how to access the desktop. Is that Apple needs to picture?
Oh, it's,
Unless you.
yeah, it's on the desktop over there, right?
Yeah.
I wanna set it up for.
can you see?
It's gonna say CB12 PDF. Yeah, there you go. Great. Thank you.
Oh, let me stop sharing my screen, sorry.
There it is. Wonderful. Okay, thank you for my 10 minutes. I'm obviously thrilled. I've never done a PowerPoint presentation in my life. So fun facts about automobiles in CB12. Okay, how many cars in CB12? You can go online, you can add them up by the zip code, they're itemized. A total of 20,464 cars. How many people? Probably nobody knows. Because you can't really census CB12, but I'm gonna guess 200,000.
Yeah, that's what it is.
The vast majority of them do not own a private vehicle. The MTA says 76% of households don't. Probably a little bit higher. I'm thinking it's 80% that don't, but okay, Dad, on the 20,000 cars. Some of this is just my own personal for the last 3 months, counting cars. I would say that less than 10% of them are driven daily. So now you're talking about 90% of cars that I'm gonna call our warehouse. The majority of those cars that are driven daily are used by people who actually work outside of the city of New York. They kind of work in Westchester or in the Bronx or in New Jersey, and they drive it because it's not practical to back commute. The majority of vehicles that are driven infrequently, walking to a second home outside of New York City is a time saving convenience device. We're not so sure how that's going to end up in the equity conversation. That's kind of hard to defend. And then there's this beautiful snowstorm on January 19th that was here for quite some time. So I did a lot of county work here in CB7, and I'm going to say that I counted maybe 30 blocks, and between 34 and 41% of those vehicles had not moved from Sunday to Friday.
Wow.
They don't move. The cars are being warehoused in our district. Okay, how do I know? I own a vehicle, I drive every day, costs $15,000 to own a vehicle in New York City. So if you don't have cash, you don't have one. I kind of have parking immunity because I have special plates. I used to have a golden placard where I had actual legal immunity. Those are different things. I do have an economics degree in Lake County. Okay, my perfectly personal conclusions. All right, the vast majority of in-district cars are best qualified as non-essential vehicles. Given the extreme cost of car ownership as a group, car ownerships have higher incomes than non-owners. The MTA said the same thing.
Make the screen so that the time is visible.
Yeah.
We're not blocking it. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you.
The vast majority of vehicles that utilize on-street parking in CB12 are essentially warehousing their vehicles because parking is free and they have time to attend alternate site parking. There's a book by Donald Shoup called The High Cost of Free Parking. I did not bring it with me because it's too heavy and too large to carry. My backpack, it's 760 or 30 pages of the cost of parking. We'll go over that briefly. And now, given that city streets are now seen as a public good, private vehicle ownership is seen as a private use. We're talking within the planning community now, not just the general public. It's no longer thought that parking on city streets is a good use of a public good. It's a private use of a public good. The analogy is water. All right, so New York City owns the land upstate. They own the watersheds, they own the pipes, they own the aqueducts, they own the plants, they own everything. And at your building, there is a meter. We don't know it because we all live in multi-unit buildings, but there's no such thing as free water in New York. Every drop you use, you pay. And the reason is that when you use that public good, another person cannot use it. It's an exclusive use of public good. So that's how to start thinking about parking. When you park on the street, no one else can use the street. And There's all sorts of other uses of the streets, from people playing on the streets to, it could be trees, benches, it could be bus line. That's not what I'm here to talk about, but we all know that, you know, if you read Movement or any of those other books, or the Study Con book, that as soon as there's a street, people, and there's no cars, people use it, and I'm swearing. People complain against that, and now it's. Okay, so policy tools to regulate parking in CV12, keep the status quo, it's not the worst of all possible. You take alternate side parking and revert it twice a week on both sides, it's gonna eliminate, in my estimation, 5 to 10% of the warehouse people. Because they're just gonna either go to a lot, it's too much. And a lot of my neighbors have actually gotten rid of a car in the last year, because they said, this is just too much. It's too hard to park. So it's free, but it's not free in time. A resident only permit parking, which is common policy elsewhere, can come here, we'll see what it can do. And I kind of like the ban overnight parking, we go back to pre-1954. That's just not personal. Throw that out there. But we'll also see that, we're laughing now. But when we think about it as a rational policy strategy, in the long term, 25 years from now, it's gonna make a much better city. So it's not something to discount. Most of the cars here don't drive, you wanna keep a car, you put it in a lot. And if you don't, then you don't wanna have a car, right? If you want a house, you live in the suburbs. If you want a car, right? Just saying.
You gotta talk to people East of Broadway, man, everybody's privileged. It's expensive.
Right, and the other thing is that when people talk to people about parking, they tend to talk to car owners. And as we know, they're a minority of the constituency. So you have to be very careful to talk to people that do not own cars. We're talking about how we should use the city streets. Okay, so resident only permit parking, basic plan is the most basic plan. Everybody has to have an address on their driver's license that's in district, and that same address has to match their bin address. And that's the sticking point, because a lot of people have cars, Jersey plates, Pennsylvania plates, Florida plates. They live here, registered out of district. So those cars are not going to be registered in district. So that's the enforcement aspect of parking program. It gets wonky fast. Another thing that I'll throw out is that you don't want a placard. It has to be like a license plate reader or a VIN reader, because as soon as you have a placard, you have a secondary market, and that placard is going to be worth $1,000. Okay, so you start with the basic plan. Everyone has to meet the address requirements. You just change alternate side parking to exclusive resident only zones. The meters stay as it is. If you're a visitor, you use the meter. Some cities don't charge anything for the program, so it can be either free or the cost of the program, which in my guess is going to be $125 per vehicle. And CV12 could be the pilot, as we know, our honorable council member is thinking about it. And we just let the 34th enforce it. So that's where that plan falls apart. All right, what the basic plan will and won't accomplish, what it will do is it will eliminate in-commute parking. You can't drive in here and park because the meters are 2 hours. So you're not going to work because you're gonna get a ticket at the meter. So that's one consideration. Not having plaques will preempt the secondary market. It will fight against closed plates. It's gonna be really hard to park unless you're at a meter for 2. So I think it's a good tool against those plates, and it will redistribute spots to residents only. And this came from Levine's office. They think that the pool of people that are out of state registered is approximately 10%. That's a big enough number that when they go into the insurance pool, it will lower everyone's rates. Okay, what it won't accomplish, it will not create a surplus of parking spots. Certainly not at this price point. It won't really deter warehousing without alternate side parking. It won't have effective enforcement. It really won't reduce cruising. That's the amount of time you spend. That's the technical term, the amount of time you spend searching for parking. There will be a backlash. It won't circumvent that. And then there's areas like the hospital that are going to need special mitigation. And then also, it's not affecting the other streetscape needs, which you can do with an enhanced plan. So the address requirement, the other things are the same. The meter parking will do 2 things. They'll do meter deserts. There's zones where there are no meters. There'll have to be meters so visitors can do something. And institutional needs like the hospital, they have a lot of people that drive in and park, they go to work, right? In Queens, they have 8-hour, 12-hour, 24-hour meters. So, but then you have a big district, now you're doing that in 100 places. Okay, so the fee would cover all costs or go beyond the cost of the program to user fund. that gives you a fund to do something with, however, that requires an Albany sign off. It's considered a tax, not a user fee. In more progressive programs, they reduce the amount that you pay for your placard, well, not your placard, but your ability to park. If you have a shorter car, because you're taking less curb space. Or you can also give a reduction for an electronic vehicle or hybrid vehicle, because you're not creating much pollution, which is one of the great external costs of driving around cruising. Okay. Also, this is something that if they come up to you guys about establishing policy, one thing is to take some of the money from either the fees, which might be slightly higher, or the traffic tickets, and create your own enforcement agency that is not NYPD, because if you're really gonna enforce this program, it's gotta be swept every 2 hours around the clock. Or you could say, well, we're not gonna enforce from 2 AM to 6 AM, it's fine, but the rest of the time. Okay, and then, one thought is that all CBs north of 60th Street might be interested in joining, which probably would be. So that's something you have to think on. And then right now, every year there's kind of a bill that's put in place in Albany, and it's usually driven by Levine's office. And so I think they have Mark Jackson do it last year, but he might not be doing it this year. And that's just a very skeleton of a bill that gives the city council the ability to write the actual policy for this. But within that, at that junction is where you want to ask for additional fees to do the enforcement. If it comes up, is all this is in the notes, you're not remembering it. And you can also fight over who gets to keep the ticket fines, because if you get to keep those, then you have more than enough money for enforcement, and you can start doing all kinds of things like planting trees, closing down streets that no longer will be needed, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, what an enhanced plan do. Again, same things, but it's gonna start deterring warehousing. Would have effective enforcement that wouldn't reduce cruising times, and providing mitigation where needed would cut down the backlash. It won't eliminate the backlash, but it'll cut into it. And it's not a total comprehensive solution. And then I have a question mark mechanism on transit, because Shoup and other people want to charge parking at a higher rate, if not a market rate. And then all those funds get turned into transit money. Now, in New York City, we don't really have a mechanism to spend that money or collect it. What I understand, the council people don't really get millions of dollars to spend in their district. So that's something that would have to be. That's by law. But if you do generate additional funds, then you have effective enforcement. You can start giving waivers to people that have income hardships. All they have to do is apply, create the amount of paperwork that you want to discourage the other people. Then you'd have funds for transit, street and skate enhancement. Then the rest is I don't want to go into that. Shoup wants, he's the head planner in the park who recently passed away, but his goal was to have 85% capacity of parking. So as there'd be no cruising, there's always a spot open. So if people throw out this number 85, you know where it came from. It's his planning on how to do parking. And it was implemented in San Francisco with SF Park, this pilot program that started in 2013. It went for 5 or 6 years, like 11,000 meters. They had dynamic pricing. The prices changed constantly. So if everyone's parked, they just crank the rates, and then they would open up spots. It's maybe a little more sophisticated than what New York's ready for right now. They had in-street sensors to tell it's open or not at the parking spot if you paid when you left. So you can leave your car there indefinitely if you were willing to pay. And then that money got turned over locally, and those blocks got spent. So now, so let's just backtrack. You don't need to remember any of that, but parking is just a toolkit, and you have to determine what your policy goals are. Like you can tell mine is like, kind of want to get rid of warehousing, start to open up the streets. And I also want to implement the fact that parking costs so much, and a lot of it is healthcare and asthma. And we all know, like that's probably a high district for that. And then it's just the thought that you have this public good. Why is it being a private use? And since we pay for everything else in New York, why not start paying for parking? We're not even asking you to pay the fair rate. which would be on street. If you ask me, how much would I pay for that spot right in front of my house? It would be 10% more than the garage, because I don't have to go to the garage. So a curb spot in this district is worth between $400 and $600, the high end, and $400 and $300 at the low end. So if you did that, and nobody knows how many parking spots are in this district. And I can't get AI after an hour, I kind of guess there was around 20,000. But if you start building those out at 300 a month, you can just solve a lot of transit problem issues that we have had. You need to accept the station, there's funds that you can do it. So that's kind of where the planners are coming from, that we have this, we're just giving this away, let's not do it anymore. And as soon as you start doing that, you start restricting the use of cars, which is a net overall benefit for the whole city. So that's the mindset that's the last 10 years. It's not a fringe mindset anymore. It's kind of the standard. This is the mainstream plan. It used to be built 88 lanes, knock down both sides of Broadway, put in 8 lanes of traffic, because it will solve whatever the problem is. But that's not anymore. And they discovered that if you remove parking spots, the cars tend to disappear. And so that's it. I have some other things, but it's probably not.
Thank you for it. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the information. So I guess we'll start the discussion, but before we jump into that, I want to just hear input from the council member's office. So Jamila, I know she'll give us concrete, what's going on with legislation so that we can actually have 2 points answered. Jamila?
Yes, hi, everyone. Good evening. So there's a few things that he mentioned in his presentation, that were accurate, and then some things that obviously are being discussed internally. For example, the goal is for the revenue of residential parking to come back into our community, but that is something that obviously has to be on paper, it has to be discussed. But as of right now, the legislation was reintroduced at a stated meeting last year in 2024. However, it was just to reintroduce it so that the council member can be the sponsor on it. Since before Mark Levine became the board president, it was his legislation. Right now, where we are right now is obviously doing press around it, trying to get feedback, not only from the community, but the city. But what needs to be done, what's the next step right now, and I just want to make sure I'm correct on this, is we need the state level, the state legislators to pass a resolution or legislation to have the DOT do a pilot, to present a pilot program for our community. So until it goes through the state level, it cannot come to the council for it to be voted through a committee. So right now they're discussing to get assembly member to sponsor to pass the bill at the state level, to then give the city DOT the authority to create the program, like I said. Then it passes the bill. Then it comes to the city council transportation and infrastructure committee. If it passes a hearing, then it goes to stated. However, there's a lot that has to be done, obviously, between those stages. Once we get on the state level, then we can start bringing it more to the community, bringing it to the community board to have your committee do a resol to push the state legislator to sponsor the bill. Right now, I can't remember who is the assembly member. It is not Manny de los Santos who represents our district. It is another assembly member, but I believe State Senator Robert Jackson is on it. So that's someone that we are going to have a conversation with, to bring to the table to move it on their level. So it's not, I cannot state that it's a cut in stone plan right now. Our community is very unique compared to other communities in the city. So there's a lot of work that DOT will have to do in order to show us this plan and make sure that it's going to be effective for our community. It does require proof of residence and then residency, I should say. And I know that that's going to be a tough conversation with our community, because many people might have New York City New Jersey plates or Connecticut and all that stuff. But that is the reason for it, right? With or without congestion pricing, many people will come and park in our community and then go to their jobs. Since we have the George Washington Bridge, which is from Jersey. We have the Bronx bridges, 207, 181st. And even coming from 225th, if you're coming from upstate, not even upstate, Riverdale, to come into the city, you're gonna come to our district and park. And one of the many press videos that the council member did with the board president, Mark Levine, it was blatantly shown that there's many plates on our streets that are not New York City, and are taking spots from our residents. So right now, that's where we are. We're just doing a lot of press. Obviously, since I said, well, now with congestion pricing, even though it's paused right now, the push is being, the push for press is more important and more in our face, I should say. But we're in the process of having the internal conversations with the state level legislators to see how we can get them to push the bill on their end, just so that we can at least have a plan. And the council member, as you guys all know, is a champion for our community. So if it's not a plan that is not going to be effective for our community, she's not going to want to move forward with it. But we at least need to have the conversation about how residential parking looks like in District 10.
Thank you. All right, so I guess we'll start with the conversation. Go ahead, Julio.
Yeah, I just wanna say, I mean, the presentation, I guess, hits a lot of points where I think it's very appropriate. However, we don't have deep pockets as, those who live in the Upper West Side, and East Side. And I think that also our community has already been somewhat displaced by a lot of things that have been done. And when we look at also, these additional fees, we have a community that depends on being a taxi driver. They have their own vehicles. They park in these streets. And I think that when we look at making these proposals where you're gonna create these, zones where you're gonna then put the burden of those payments on the driver who are already struggling, if you're a taxi driver, for example. And my concern is, and I get frustrated by this, is that when we look at price congestion, which is great. However, you're taking from that pot of money and you're giving out to other communities where are not being impacted as Northern Manhattan are. And yet they say, we're gonna give millions of dollars, even the governor said, let's give millions of dollars to New Jersey and to please them. But nothing in terms of mitigating what's happening in Northern Manhattan. And I think, to me, that's outrageous, and I think that is where elected officials need to concentrate themselves. It isn't about putting the burden on the other drivers to increase revenues. So those same money that they're providing millions of dollars to those communities, they could say, we're gonna do residential parking in Northern Manhattan, and guess what? You have price congestion, that money should come from there. And you should not be burdening local residents with that cost. And in terms of, who benefits that? Yeah, if you live in Manhattan, you have a license, that license corresponds to your New York City, plate. Yeah, then you should be, eligible for that. But again, we should not put the burden on residents of this community because they're already suffering enough. And to add another $100 or something may not seem a lot to folks, but it's a lot. It could be a breaking point for a lot of these child drivers.
It's true, and that's my issue with residential parking. In order for it to really work, you actually have to hike up the prices. So 125 is pretty generous. If you go and look at in Jersey, so I'm drawing a blank today.
Hoboken, $57 a year, and then it progresses.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's 57. There's all this is in a massive policy thing that we hopefully will send all the board members. But so it's 57 for the first car, it's 114 for the second, and then it's 228 for each car above that, because they want to keep each household at one car. I'll just do Hoboken in 30 seconds. The other salient thing is that they have 6 full-time staff members for a population of roughly 70,000 or less. And So we just have to assume that we're gonna have at least 12 full-time staff members. They're gonna have to be paid, housed, and everything else. That's the main cost of the program.
What else does Hoboken have?
Now,
Universal daylighting
Yeah,
on
but
every
never
single
seen- yeah,
intersection, and they've had 0 pedestrian fatalities since they've done that. 0.
I also agree with the affordability part of it, which is why I said that we need to have a pilot program be presented first. If it's not going to be feasible for our community, if it's not going to be feasible for the people who work daily on a daily basis to provide for their family, then it's not going to work for our community. So I just wanted to make sure that that was echoed. Like I said, the presentation that we're going to do is going to have way more information once we get there. But right now it's so in the air of what it might look like. We cannot give a full-on presentation.
It's just preliminary conversation, just us to engage in the topic and start having these discussions. This is inevitable, but.
Sure, so just to continue, like obviously we're talking about cars, like there's a huge problem with people finding parking and whatnot. I would love to see Intro 80 discussed at this board. That's the bill for citizens to report vehicles. I'd love to see you guys report, write a resolution in favor of it. I don't know where the council member stands on that particular bill. But that would alleviate a lot of the issues with cars on the streets. The program works very well. It's already in existence for trucks that idle, and now you don't see trucks idling anymore because they know they'll get a ticket. And, you know, a citizen can just go and film a video, has to fit certain specifications, like 2 minutes or whatever, clearly showing the truck that's idling, and they get a portion of the revenue. So there's incentive for the people to police their own streets. And as we keep talking, there's a problem with enforcement with 34th and across the city as well. A lot of council members have signed on to Intro 80, so I would love to see more support for that, especially from our community board. And then another comment about residential permit parking is we already have this kind of massive issue, and this comes up every single time at this board meeting. When we talk about even removing 1 or 2 parking spaces, the discourse online is also incredibly toxic. You have a ton of people that are all car owners that want to see city bike removed. They want to see all bike lanes removed. And to me, if people start paying for their parking spaces, they're going to feel like they own those spaces even more than they already feel like they do right now. And that is going to make clawing those parking spaces away for any future projects like bike lanes or whatever, which, as you guys know, we've built the fewest miles of bike lane across like all of Manhattan, I believe. The fewest have been built in CB12. So like I would love to see us turn that around and actually like start, you know, leading a little more progressive change on that front. And resident permit parking is just going to set us back on that extremely because, you know, imagine we start the program and then you say, oh, we want to do a bike lane, it's going to remove 15 parking spaces. You're going to have this whole room full of people that say, I pay $200, $300 for that parking space. How can you remove it? So like, that's another thing to keep in mind.
Very good one.
Intro 80 is the city council? Or
Yes,
Yeah.
city council.
There was an article like a few months ago, some guy made like $30,000 last year.
Yep.
Reporting
The idling
trucks,
trucks, yeah.
That's great. Jamila, does the council member have a position on Intro 80?
I'm looking it up right now. I do not see that she signed on, so I just asked our legislative director to give me info on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to address like the burden talk and like you had mentioned earlier, like asthma is a problem. And it's actually the highest rates in the entire country.
Yeah.
It's not like we're the highest in the city, it's the highest. I actually do research here at Columbia. We clearly do research on like adolescent and uncontrolled asthma. We have the highest rates here in the Bronx in the entire country. In the I-95 corridor. And I understand there's a financial burden on drivers when they have to pay for the parking, but it's New York City, right? Like we spend thousands of dollars to live in like small areas. How are we going to give away this like 9 by 10 foot area or whatever it is, increasingly larger with these larger vehicles that just take up more and more space, right? And in multiple of them, it's not economically, it doesn't make any sense to give me this away. And the other thing is that in terms of the financial burden, the cost of having a car here is so large. The majority of people here don't have them. So the amount of people it affects is pretty small. And I understand there are, taxi drivers, stuff like that, but the cost of ownership is so large that like a couple $100 a year is so small compared to like insurance, and like wear and tear. With the price you pay on like your car, like a lot of people like you're spending way more than they should probably on a loan for a car. Like all these things add up, like $200 is like nothing compared to like $12.
But it's not even taxi driver. You see a lot of people here, they have cars and they don't make a lot of money. Like Julio was saying, the income tax, the low income taxes are like 35,000, 40,000. And top of that, they gotta pay, parking permits. Who know how much it's gonna be, right? So.
To answer this point, so we have a misconception that people who have car is a luxury, right? Yes, that's show that it is a luxury. I mean, you're paying, but the reality, a lot of us use it for work.
Exactly.
I work in different projects in the Bronx. So my commute without a car would be about, throughout my day, about 3 or 4 hours. When I have deadlines, I have meetings I have to get to. I have meetings from the South Bronx, you go all the way up to Riverdale and then back. So it's luxury because you're paying extra, but the reality, a lot of us use it for work. That's how I make my money. So we have this misconception that people who own cars just have a lot of money. I agree with a lot of points, right? Yes, it's true, right? We should focus more on bike lanes. We do have a few this year, something that Eli and I have been talking on in the background, and how we can promote and advocate more for bike lanes in our area, how we can have connections to the different bike connections all around the Bronx, over to Manhattan. But I also want us to consider, right? It's twofold. There's other people in our community that utilize the cars, cab drivers. There's people who use it for other things, right? So we want to take into consideration that there's other people sitting at the table discussing these things, right? That need. So you're not wrong, but let's consider both sides.
Just 2 quick points. So in New York City, everything, there's a section marked that's overcharged, there's a section marked that's undercharged. So whatever program that comes in this area, certain people will get a waiver and will not have to pay.
Yeah.
Other people will probably pay slightly more than the actual. But one point that planners made that I didn't really spell out correctly is that there are costs for driving. And the community pays those, the driver doesn't. It's the use of space, it's the pollution, it's the traffic violence. And so now the question is, and this is what the right would say, Milton Friedman from 1950, whatever, every road should be a toll road. And if you own a car, they're not asking you to do anything but pay the cost that car, right now you're parking free on a street that was built, but you did not pay for your parking spot. So, but if you come in that mindset, then it's just like, we're not trying to overcharge cars, we're just trying to charge them what it's actually costing the city at large for the use of that car.
Well, Robin, then we're gonna allow that.
To be honest with you, to all you guys, that's gonna be crazy. One, you haven't heard a lot of people get killed because of parking space. Imagine, let's say an example, I'm a taxi driver. And you have your own parking in the street. If I see, I'm gonna park right there. If I got a ticket, it's okay. I got the next day. But then you're gonna create an enemy. It's crazy. So we gotta count and those things those things that can happen to all of us. Not to you, can be to happen to Julio, can happen to anybody. So we have to take in consideration those little things.
Let me let Diane, I know you've been waiting. Let me let Deacon Jackson and then Allegra, and then we'll close out this topic.
Thank you. Yes, my concern with this is, and I'm a Washington Heights resident all my life. I have a car. I just turned 74 years, right? Yeah, it's 74 years old. And my concern is I have New York plates. Am I going to be guaranteed I get a spot? And the reason I'm asking this is because there's way more legit New York cars than there are parking spaces. Another concern is I'm one of those one who warehouses. You know why? Because when I move my car, sometimes I have to go around 2, sometimes 3 hours to find a parking spot when I come back. So now half the time I don't move my car unless it's to do something emergency wise, like go shopping, food shopping. I don't go to visit my grandkids and stuff that often because when I come back, I can't find parking. All these garages you keep saying, oh, they'll just go in the garage. Those garages are few and far between, and they don't have capacity to house all the cars that are here. Not only that, when you get to the garages, most of the time they're full. So now I come out and now it's nighttime. I use a rollator. I'm riding around 2 and 3 hours, trying not to fall asleep, trying to find a parking spot. So you have to take all these things into consideration. Everyone, like the gentleman just said, who has a car is not going to a second home. We're not, we're not rich and we can afford this spot or that spot or whatever. For most of us, it's a necessity. And you might say, well, if you're not going to use the car, then obviously you're doing something else to get around. Yeah, you know what I do? I stay home. So now my activities are curtailed because I'm not eligible for Access-a-Ride. It's just hard getting to and from the bus stops because they keep moving the bus stops. And the reason why it's hard to get a count of how many parking spots there are is because they keep taking them away or moving them. Every time I turn around, there's a new car sharing spot taking up spots. There's construction on St. Nicholas, where I live. They're doing a lot of construction with pipes or other things like that. So many times you come down and now there's no parking. This is daily when you might come out and there's no parking because you can't park here from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. So now what do you do with your car? You're sitting in your car most of the time until you can get a spot. So this is a major concern for a lot of people. This is not something you can cavalierly say, oh, well, you just have to pay for your spot. I pay for taxes, I pay for rent, I pay for food, I pay for electricity, I pay for so many things as a human being in New York City. My taxes should be going for all of this stuff that you're talking about, but evidently they don't. But don't penalize us for having a car as if our concerns are not important as a bike riders or a walker. I would love to walk, but a lot of times I can't. But thank you. But I want those concerns. Am I going to be guaranteed a spot? Overnight parking. Does that mean that I won't have, even as if I have a permit, I can't park on the street overnight? All these things have to be in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Deacon Jackson. Allegra?
Thank you so much, Leo. Hi, Allegra LeGrand. I haven't really fully self-identified. I'm a parent, and my child has asthma. And I know that people have talked about the trials and tribulations of circling the neighborhood looking for their parking, but I would like to tell you about what it feels like to be a parent when your child presents like a fish out of water because their asthma flares up. And I would like to also preface this story by saying that for every bloody, horrible, excruciating to witness death we see of car versus human, that every bloody death we see, 10 times that number of deaths occur from air quality malfeasance created by cars. So let me tell you about a story of my child. She's 15 now, but let me tell you when she was 3 years old. And she was such a bright and beautiful little girl. And she got respiratory syncytial virus, like so many of our young children do. And after that, every time she got a cold, she would be part of the New York City fabric, and she would wind up in the emergency department right there at the Morgan Stanley Children's Hospital on 165th Street. I feel like I know that hospital in the back of my hand. I knew it by the back of my hand where they had the alternate entrance, like there with the adults up closer to 168th, and then they finally moved it down to the basement at 165th. I have been there more times than I can count. I spent the night there. I've overnighted there, and I know why she was there. She was there because the air quality in New York City sucks. And it's awful because of vulture parkers, people who think they are entitled to park for free on New York City streets and live off the backs of people who do not own cars. My child was in the hospital, and let me tell you, when you register your child in that hospital, it's $650. That's what they say when you just like say, hello, my name is. That's your first charge. And then every single treatment your child gets is a charge on top of that. So while we are thinking about subsidizing the parking of people who are annoyed by circling the neighborhood for their quote unquote free parking, free being on the backs of vulnerable people like children and like our elderly, though somebody is paying. It may not be the person who is driving the car that's paying, but somebody is paying for that quote unquote free parking. And I would like very much for my grandchildren not to endure that kind of suffering. It is not just from internal combustion engines, also electric vehicles, the tires that from those kinds of vehicles, from all kinds of vehicles, also produce fine particulate matter. The congestion pricing, it is great for New York City as a whole, something that we have to be mindful of here in I don't know, maybe it muted me halfway through. Something we have to be mindful of here in upstate Manhattan is that even electric vehicles, because they are heavy and tires produce fine particulate matter that is toxic. I have posted in the Q&A the website the EPA has produced. Please download it today. It may be gone tomorrow, but that fine particulate matter is toxic for our children's health. It's toxic for our health. It's toxic for the flora and fauna that we live with for their health. We are all paying the price for free parking, free driving, and for the subsidy of car drivers. And please, please, for the love of your children and your grandchildren and for people coming behind you, be cognizant that this is not the way that people can get around for free. There is a Thank you.
All right. James? Go ahead, James. You have this.
I just need a clarification that maybe I'm not seeing this correctly, but if you have congestion pricing and you're keeping out drivers from other areas, won't there be more parking than less parking?
Just keep going.
No, if we're eliminating parking of drivers from other areas.
Right.
Why are we worried about there being less parking defined than, you know?
Okay, so one lesson that they learned from the 50s, and this goes back to building more lanes on roads to ease congestion. There's a law that sadly appears to be universally true. It's called the law of induced demand. And because if you're even close to middle class, owning a car is not an onerous burden financially, it's easy. So if there turns out to be a surplus of parking spots, other people will buy cars. Now, also, just remember that on my blocks, consistently 8 to 12% of the cars are out of state plates, and I know they don't drive in a park. They live here on the block because they're my neighbors and I know them. Those cars are all going to register to New York State because they want to park on their street. So you're not going to create any extra car until you get to this is all in the big handout that until you get to 400 a month, you're not creating any surplus stuff.
I don't know. I just can't believe that. I'm sorry.
Right, that's not for me, there's a lot of, there's like 10 or 15 years of data.
Yeah, there's volume of evidence supporting this.
Yes, but if we were limiting parking for only residents that live here, then there's other things that we've done here.
Well, there's only, sorry to interrupt you, there's 20% of residents own a car currently. A lot of people, if you talk to them, will say they don't own a car because it's hard to find parking. So if you make it easy, so it will definitely just be induced.
That may be true to a lot of neighborhoods, but I don't know if that would be true in a business.
Also, if you're in a garage, you can just come start parking down the street and save $400, $500, $600 a month.
It's a point.
There's a famous law called Parkinson's law that says work will expand to fill the time allotted for it. Same goes for highways and a lot of things. And he was a famous historian 30 years ago. And it seems to be true. You expand the Long Island Expressway from 6 lanes to 8 lanes, it's still jammed. Yeah. Yes, it is. It's the same thing. Yeah.
No,
If you-
all right,
create
I
more
don't want to
space-
get back and forth with you, but it's not the same thing, because we're talking about limiting the parking to our residents. It's not about people just, anybody can drive on the highway. It's not the
No,
same.
I'm saying if you create more parking, there are gonna be more cars to park there.
That's, you're assuming that more people are gonna buy cars then.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what he's saying, according to the data.
All right, we're gonna advance the agenda. It's 9:30 at night, and I've been up since 5 in the morning. I love to have conversations. We can have it offline. It's an ongoing conversation. Jamila said there's a process that goes through. I think we should continue having these conversations. We want to get at the forefront of it so that we can get as much input and try to get things right. It will never be right. It's just how legislation works and government works. But if we can come to a middle ground so that people who really need it don't get screwed, and obviously take into considerations health and funding, finance, and everything else, it's just an ongoing thing. We'll definitely continue discussing.
Oh, yeah.
We're nowhere close to legislation passing. DOT, once it goes to the state level and council signs it, DOT has to come up with a very difficult plan of how this works, and that can take years. So yes, it's something that's it's within reach, but it's not as close as we want. So we'll continue this conversation.
Just like 5 seconds. I just forgot to mention, with Intro 80, as you mentioned, the FDNY has had a lot of problems with fire hydrants. Intro 80 would also address that. They also issued their first criminal, summons to that car that was parked in front of the fire hydrant in the Bronx, which I think was $4,000.
Yeah, 4,000, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I don't know about you guys. My building has a fire hydrant right in front. If I look out my window, because I'm facing the street, there's a car parked in front of that every single night, and I report it every single night on 311. I've seen it get ticketed only 3 times since I started reporting. I have probably 40 reports. I do it every single night. Only 3 times have I woken up in the morning to see a ticket. And, God forbid there's a fire or something. So I'd love to see the council members support it.
We can discuss it. We can discuss it. All right, we're gonna move on with the agenda.
Real quick,
Yeah, Jamila, go ahead. Right, we'll move on.
the council member did sign on, when we first got to office in 2022. But for one day you had to, what's that called? Due to the census, we all know the council had 2-year terms, except for this upcoming year. When they reintroduced it again, it was reducing the packaging of pills, and she wasn't able to get on it, but she is in support of that intro.
Thank you.
All right, good. We'll give you 10 seconds for your comment. Then we'll do it.
Anybody who wants the 10-page inside policy wand, you got my email on that sheet, just email me, and I will ask Leo to send it to the.
Yeah, I'll
council
circulate
members
that.
here. It's 10-page, goes over Hoboken and all kinds of things in detail. I'm happy to answer any questions from that side that I might possibly know.
As for old business, we had some updates from DOT. I believe you guys were on that email, but I'll forward it. I believe you guys were. I'll forward it. It was just like I said, a laundry list, and I'll update it as much as we could. We could share points, including your walkthrough. And as for new business, so next month, and I'll send you guys as well. The code of street naming, I'll send you guys the guidelines. You heard it's a very difficult conversation. We hear about a lot of people who care for family members, but importantly, we have to do due diligence and adhere to those guidelines. So I just want to put that out there.
What are the guidelines?
I'll send you. It's like a 2 or 3 page application, and then breaks down of how we should go, not go for it,
How we
but
should be
what we should be looking at. When we
That's a good idea.
pass it, so I want you guys to get familiar with it, you know, you can see it's gonna be a pretty heavy conversation.
It has to
Um,
go to the full board.
and then it has to go to the full board.
Circulate the guidelines. to the
yes,
board as well.
Templeton got it. And we will also have a conversation with open data presentation on the universal daylight. So, like, he's mentioned in the past, us, I think community board 10 are the only two boards that haven't passed any resolution.
I will say Carmen has signed on to that.
Okay.
Just as a caveat, but we should still write a resolution, in my opinion.
Universal data.
On universal daylight. We'll have a presentation, we'll probably. Like, send it this month. All right, so any motion?
Motion here.
James, Robin second, and that's all she wrote.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Good job, Leo.
Another long.
Okay, thank you. Very sweet.
Another long.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. By the way, we're doing what we call the Community Builders Hall of Fame in conjunction with United Pilots. So we're gonna have an presentation that we can send out. Yes, ma'am. For the community engagement board as a certain point, so people that we can nominate if they feel that it's someone who needs to be immortalized. So we're gonna start doing that.
Great. That's awesome.
Come back next month.
Yeah.